Our next speaker, our gold medal winner in the National Sales Olympics, one of our newest members of the President's Honor Club, sold no less than 150 programs this past year, Motivator of the Year from the Americas region. She'll be discussing selling to prime buying motives. Our challenge, as master salespeople, is to discover what is in the mind of the prospect. We must discover what it is they want and why they want it. When you have that information, the rest of the job becomes fairly easy. Please welcome Nancy Eichstadt from South Carolina in the USA.
Great, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Good. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. If we can go ahead and cue up the PowerPoint presentation, we're going to go ahead and get started here for you. The first thing that I really wanted to be able to start with is just asking the question, what do we know? Truly, hopefully, we know about our products, we know about our services, we know that we've got programs and assessments, we know we have a process, we know a lot about what we have to sell to people. We also should know an awful lot about those features and benefits. The features and benefits of what our process and our products and our services can do for our clients. But before we go into an actual sales interview, what do we really know about what our clients need? What are their greatest challenges on a day-to-day basis? What are they struggling with? I mean, we can do all the internet research, the LinkedIn, the website. We can do all of that to prepare ourselves before we get into the sales interview. But do we really know what's going on in the minds of our clients before we get there? No, we don't. Who is the only one who really knows what they're going through? The prospect, right? Our client that we're going into. Now, what's interesting is I have had the luxury of not only having a sales career. I started out right out of college with a little company called Dow Chemical and was thrown right into sales. It was a terrific training ground. That was back in the 80s when they really, these companies did a phenomenal job providing training to their employees. And I learned a lot about the sales process, the sales cycle, and how to become a better salesperson. But little did I know, several years later, I was given an opportunity to head up our strategic sourcing department, which i.e. is purchasing. So I had the opportunity to actually sit on the other opposite side of the desk for quite a significant period of time. And I got to see the good, the bad, and the downright ugly sales reps that came in to try to call on us. It was so fascinating to actually sit on the other side of the desk to be able to see what works and what doesn't work and what I liked about the people who came to call on me. And what I really liked as a buyer was when they took the time not to sell me their products and their services and their features and their benefits, but to ask questions about what am I really looking for? What am I challenged with? I don't even know as a sales rep, Nancy, if I can meet your needs. Let's explore this together. Let's determine if there's a fit here. And so from that perspective, it was a wonderful opportunity so that when I got back into the sales side of the business, which is really what we're doing, you can't facilitate anything until you sell it. So when I got back in, obviously from a sales perspective, it helped me to become a better sales rep, to really be able to focus on that. And getting to know the client and what their challenges are is really doing a great job about exploring those prime buying motives. So what are prime buying motives? Essentially, it's a specific measurable, and photographable result that through our effective questioning, you're actually going to get your prospect to tell you, first of all, are they emotionally committed to getting it? Are they committed to taking action to get it? And the third is, are they committed to making an investment in their time, effort, money, and resources, i.e. their people, to get it? So why is specific, measurable, and photographable important? Why is that a key component to the prime buying motive? Let me give you an example. Lisa's going to talk to us later about our win-win agreements, our win-win goals. How many of us here have experienced, we work with a client and we have them complete what their win-win agreement, their win-win goals are going to be, that they come back with something very vague and fuzzy. It happens a lot. I mean, and they've even been given the material on how to write a SMART goal, how to make it specific and measurable and attainable and realistic and tangible. They've been given all of that information. They've read it. It's an assignment. They've got 2 weeks or a week to put it all together, and they still come back with something that's vague and fuzzy. And we all know that vague and fuzzy goals are going to get what? Vague and fuzzy results. Vague and fuzzy results, right? And so from that perspective, if our clients, the prospects that we're in meeting with in a sales interview, if they can't be clear in defining what their situation is, and they're vague and fuzzy, how can they become emotionally committed to that if they can't even describe it? So that's why the specific, measurable, and photographable becomes so key to this entire process. One of the other things that we do when we say painting pictures, we have a skills assessment. It's a comparison. Basically, at the beginning of our EPP, as an example, we will have the participant complete a form on 15 different skill sets, and their manager or mentor fills out the same form on those 15 different skill sets. And they rate them like 1 through 10. Are you all familiar with this? What we do with this in the United States, and we've enhanced this, is we use and create this as an exercise where we then say with our participants in our class, we said, so if your manager or your mentor tells you that you really need to improve upon your communication skills, what do you think that means? And without a doubt, the participants are saying, I've got to work on my public speaking or my presentations. I always seem to give way too much detail and I don't focus in on, and they're jumping to conclusions. I said, how do you really know that? What do you mean? Well, did your manager tell you that? Well, no. Well, what does your manager really mean? If they rated you a 3 out of 10 in communication and said you need to improve upon your communication skills, what does that mean to you? Can you clearly see what the undesired behaviors are versus the desired behaviors? No. Who's the only one that knows that? My manager, my mentor. So the whole point of that exercise is to open up the lines of communication so that the manager and the participant become exceptionally good at painting pictures for each other around the desired and the undesired behaviors. Here's how this works. So if the manager-mentor would say, Sally, we love your enthusiasm. We love your excitement. We love the idea generation that you bring to every meeting. But you get so excited, you get so motivated, so emotional, you want to dominate the conversation. And what happens is everybody else in the room seems to want to back off and not contribute as much because you're controlling the conversation. What we'd really like for you to do is improve upon your listening skills. Now, is that something more photographable? Is that something where we're painting pictures for the employee that the next time they go into a meeting, they can change their behaviors to more of the desired behaviors? Yes. Well, so you're probably sitting here thinking, well, I thought this topic was on prime buying motives. Well, it is. How does this apply when we're in front of our clients? If, again, if we can't be specific, if our clients can't be specific in describing for us what's going on in their organization, what their greatest challenges are, we just want to jump to conclusions. And we want to basically jump to conclusions around, here's all of our products, services, here's our features and benefits, which one do you want to buy? And they can't get emotionally connected with that. So we've got to do a better job of painting pictures and encouraging that discussion and having our clients paint those pictures for us. So what we're going to do today under the selling of the prime buying motives, basically I'm going to help you discover the prime buying motive, relate the value of our services to the prime buying motive, and demonstrate that the value will be greater than investment. So we're all familiar with the 9-step, and I'm so glad that Randy went through the process presentation just a second ago, because we have a 9-step interview process. And we're all familiar with what the 9 steps are, but let's assume for today's purposes that we've already been through the first 4 in this interview. I'm going to kind of do like a little mock interview here for you. We've already been through the first 4. We've built rapport. We've built our credibility. We're establishing trust, and we're getting to the point, even from the where and the who, you're starting to fill out your client information form. They've walked you through their org chart. You know, just the first probably 15 minutes or no more than that of our sales interview process, that's all done. And what we're going to focus on right here this morning is really more around 5 and 6. Out of this 9-step process. So the last half of this is really where the focus is, but 5 and 6 is where the prime buying motives lie. That's the key area for us. So when we look at prime buying motives in those 2 steps, you've got the what and the why. That what is essentially the need. What do they really need? And the why is the motive. What is going to get them to be motivated to act? Do you need me? Oh, the what and the why, the need and the motive. And the motive obviously is what's going to get the client to act. We've got to get to the motive. Now keep in mind, these folks really don't care what you have to sell. They do care about what you have to sell if it's going to help them meet that need and fulfill their motive. So what we've got to get really good at is being able to relate or translate how our services are going to meet the needs, fulfill their motives, and show that the value is going to far outweigh their investment. So, what kinds of whats and whys do we normally hear about? There's a whole list of whats and whys. There's a lot that I hear more often. I commonly hear things like, I have no work-life balance. I hear things like, I can't get my employees to do what I want them to do. I hear that our employees aren't engaged and motivated, and it's impacting our results significantly. There's all kinds of things that we consistently hear about, and unless there's some kind of a trigger, either they're doing a plan expansion and they're growing, or they're downsizing, or they're doing something that triggers some big change in their business, there's really no way for us to know what their what and their why is until we get in front of them, until they can clearly describe for us what the what and why is. Now, are there more than this? Absolutely. It's unlimited. What's really key here, though, is please don't jump to conclusions. Don't be that employee who thinks they know what their manager's rating of a 3 means. Because you have no clue what your prospect or your client there, then I always call them, I don't call them my prospects, I call them my client because they're going to be my client, right? So when you're in front of that client, you really don't know. They've got to articulate this, and you've got to help them get good at articulating. All right? So, we've all heard the phrase, selling ain't telling, asking is. I hear that from Sam all the time. How many here are familiar with our Effective Leadership Development course? Lesson 3. What's the terrific process in Lesson 3? Tell me about it. The tell me about it process. Now here's another classic example. Our participants are going through the process. They've already read the material, they've done the application action, they've completed the case study, they're doing the actual coaching process in their plan of action. And we get to this discussion point and we say, walk us through how it went. Walk us through your tell me about it process. How did it go? And they're like, well, this is what happened. And I told the employee that they got to do this, and this is how they got to do it, and if they don't do it this way, and it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Does that ever happen to anybody? They consistently get back into the let me tell you mode, not the tell me about it mode. And what happens again is that in that process, you have to, as a manager, basically state what the problem is, but then you're encouraged, in fact, strongly encouraged, to then ask probing questions to be able to get the employee to be part of their own solution, to come up with their own solution, to make a commitment to you around what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, how frequently they're going to do it, how they're going to track and measure it, and it's getting them to tell. And it's the hardest thing for our participants as managers to do because there's so much in this mode of putting that management cap on. I'm making the big bucks. I've got to, solve the problems. I'm being paid to tell my employees what to do and how to do it. And it doesn't work. You won't get long-lasting results. And so it's the exact same thing that seems to happen to us when we're in front of from a sales interview standpoint. We don't ask enough questions. We don't pause long enough through that awkward silence to wait for our clients to tell us what's really going on. We want to sometimes tell them all about our products and services, tell them all about our features and benefits, and sometimes we even want to tell them what they ought to buy and they haven't even told us what their challenges are yet. So we've got to get really good at asking probing questions, effectively, genuinely listening, and then ask some more clarifying questions to make sure you really understand. Don't jump to conclusions. In our sales certification process, another process, in the sales certification there's an audio that refers to the sales ladder. This was a hard one for me. I'm definitely a visual person and I need to be able to see the graphics, and this was all on audio. So I'm sitting here trying to draw out my ladder and go up the ladder and down the ladder, and I'm really trying to make sense of all this. And it's a great process when you understand it. But I was really challenged, but let me just kind of help you through this and then I'll share with you how I changed it a little bit to work for me. The first step of that sales ladder is the degree of success step. You work up the ladder. The second step of that rung is really the results step. And then the third is you get to the behavior step. Now, there's some synonyms that go with this as well. And the synonyms for the behavior step is action, cause, and the what. The synonym for the results step is going to be the benefit, the effect, and the why. Now, does success, results, and behavior sound familiar to anybody? What does that sound like? The success chain, or the behavior, change, habit change ladder, whatever you want to call it, but I call it the success chain, and it looks like this. Does that look familiar? It's part of our kickoff. It's part of our LMI concept. I use this all the time. When I first started with LMI, I presented it just the way I was supposed to present it in the kickoff, and then it's like, thank goodness that's passed, and I'm never, going to have to introduce that throughout the whole process again because I checked it off my list, and it's part of the concept, and it's gone. But when you really understand the power of the success chain, you will find that you can use this throughout almost every discussion in all of our programs, because this is the DNA of what makes people do what they do. It affects not only how managers have an impact on employees, but how employees have an impact on managers. So this is constantly reintroduced in all of the facilitation that I do, but I also now use it in my sales interviews. Because the top 3 sections of that is our sales ladder, right? So I'm going to walk you through how I actually will use this. But here's the 9 steps again. Again, just to reiterate, we're going to kind of be starting right here at 5 and 6, right? And most people, if you follow the script will tell you basically to ask, what is the most current challenge either you or your organization is facing today? Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that question, except if you're like me, what I typically got back is, oh, the economy's lousy and my competition is doing this, and it's all the kind of uncontrollable kinds of things that we go off in a tangent, and then before I know it, my whole sales interview time has been lost because I wasn't able to focus the direction of the conversation. So to focus the conversation to really go where you want it to go, what we're going to do is we're going to have kind of a little mock interview, and I'm going to say my client's name is Joe for the purposes of today. And I'm going to say, Joe, if it's okay with you, I'd like to ask you a series of questions now just to see if we can explore if there's a fit between what our services can do for you and your organization. Would that be okay with you? And Joe says, well, sure. It's like, oh, great. Just bear with me here. But what we have found is that it has been demonstrated over and over and over again that the degree of success that an organization enjoys is based on the accumulative results that it produces. If I were to ask you, Joe, how's business? Did you have a good year? Was it successful? You would either answer yes or no. But you would base that yes or no based on some type of performance measurement. The results. You know what your results are. You know what determines your degree of success. So you're answering yes or no because you've got something here that identifies with the results. So if your results were positive, you'd say, yes, I had a successful year. If your results were not positive, you'd say, we probably could have done better. So Joe, would you agree with me that the degree of success in any organization is based on the accumulative results that it produces? Well, yeah, I can see that now. Okay, good. And yet, Joe, you and I, we both know that it's not the organizations that produce the results, it's the people. People produce results. And Joe, technically, the results are the consequence of our behaviors, the things we do, our actions. If we're working on the right kinds of things and doing the right kinds of things, we're probably going to get the right kinds of results. If we're not working on the right things or not doing the right things, we're not going to get the kind of results that we deem to be successful. Would you agree with that? It's the people, it's the behavior. So the behavior and the results, it's a cause and effect relationship. So Joe, would you agree with me that your results as an organization or your own individual results are based on the cumulative, or based on the consequence, excuse me, of your behaviors, the things that you do? Well, yeah. Well, let me give you another example so that you can all tie in with this as well. I do a lot with manufacturers. And I am telling you, almost everywhere I go, they have a time and attendance issue. Either people aren't showing up on time or they aren't showing up at all. And that's a real problem. At least here in the US, in my area, it is. And so I'm being called into organizations to say, can you help us with our time and attendance issues? And it's like, well, I don't know, but let me come in, we'll ask a series of questions. So if it's okay, can I ask you a series of questions? And you kind of start going through this process. And you sit there and you say, well, what are the results you're getting? It's like, well, this is our, our tardiness, this is our, absenteeism. And it's like, okay, what do you think are the behaviors that are causing that? Well, these people just aren't showing up. We don't know why they're not showing up. And it's like, well, let me ask another question. Do you have a policy around time and attendance? Well, yeah, we've got policies. Do you have consequences that go with the policies? Well, yeah, we got consequences, that go with the policies. And like, great. Do all of your managers consistently follow the policy, including the consequences? No, we don't. Some are better than others, but no, our managers, we don't. And then I think we're afraid that if we don't apply the consequences, there's FMLA and all these other kinds of things, that we'd lose people, and then we're retraining. And okay. But what you're telling me is, could it possibly be that the behaviors of your managers not following the policy are causing the results? Could that possibly be sending a message to your employees that it's okay to show up late or not show up at all because there's no negative consequence? Could the two be a cause and effect relationship? Possibly. That's how that works. That's how one of the examples are that I use all the time. So, Joe, in what area of your business would you like to achieve greater success? Well, Nancy, I really think that, the thing for us is we've got to produce greater output. We have to increase our output. Technically, we're saying he wants to produce more widgets in a given period of time. Is produce more widgets specific, measurable, and photographable? No. Produce more widgets? How much more? In what period of time? Is that really specific, measurable, and photographable? No. So every time we get a response going through the rest of this process, we've got to keep asking more questions until we get something that probes deeper to get that specific, measurable, and photographable. So Joe, what specific results are you currently getting? What leads you to believe that you'd like to improve upon this area? Well, currently we're getting about 800 widgets an hour. We'd really need to get to 1,000 widgets an hour in order for us to hit our performance measurements, our KPIs that are going to convert into the financial numbers that we need. Now, is that more specific, measurable, and photographable? Yes. So you're getting Joe to provide us with some specifics, and he in his mind is starting to also see where he's going with this. So Joe, if you're only getting 800 widgets an hour and you really need 1,000 widgets an hour, what behaviors do you think is really causing that? Whew. Do you open up a can of worms? I'm telling you, our employees are lazy, they're not motivated, they don't want to work together, they don't listen to anything the supervisors tell them, and it's like all of a sudden you just hear all the stuff that wants to come out around what he thinks is causing the situation. And he says, and our supervisors are getting so upset with them because no matter what they say or what they do, the employees aren't listening, they're not doing anything, they're even threatening them, and it's like, threatening them? Could that be fear motivation? Does fear motivation work? Short term, but not long term. It's not what we're really looking for. And so the more you're uncovering what's going on. He also says, and then it's just as soon as we get them trained, they quit. Oh, so now you have a turnover issue. What's your turnover? And he starts providing more specifics for you. And all you've done was just ask a few questions around behaviors that are associated with his results. Now, not always does the interview go that smoothly. If you've ever been in an interview and you ask certain questions, many times your clients are sitting there going, I don't know. I don't know what the problem is. I can't put specifics on it. And so I will sometimes pull this out and I'll say, well, let's just talk through some of the top 5 challenges that leaders are experiencing today. Typically, the top 5 challenges is they're not focusing on priorities. They need more personal organization, personal productivity, communication, people development. What does that mean? What does that look like? Focusing on priorities. First of all, identifying what those priorities are, focusing on the priorities, and making sure that everything you do is stayed focused around that, whether it's high payoff activities or your metrics or your KPIs, but staying focused around that. Personal organization is being able to stay on top of those things that matter most. The personal productivity is on a day-to-day basis getting done what needs to get done in order to be able to stay on top of those things. The communication is when you really share with your employees to jump, they know how high, how fast, how far, that you have clearly communicated to them the expectations, which is a huge gap in businesses today. And then the people development, basically, you want your people to be able to do all of these things too so that you can be more focused on even more things that are more important to you at your higher level in the organization. So out of those 5, technically, what would you say is one of the areas that would have the greatest impact on your success? And then commonly, you walk them through, they pick one, and you go through and you keep probing deeper and asking questions, and you say, well, why? Well, why that one? Why is that one important? And so you're, again, getting the person to describe for you what's going on, what their challenges are. You're not making any assumptions. So what we've just done, basically, is that we have identified the less than satisfactory results, that he's only getting the 800 versus 1,000 widgets produced, and he's got turnover, of a pretty high substantial number. And then we've also had him identify the less than satisfactory behaviors, some of the behaviors that are going on. So we've walked kind of through one side of the success chain. And now what we're going to do is we're going to turn that 180 degrees. And while we turn it 180 degrees, we want to make sure that we're going to listen for, are they emotionally committed? Are they committed to taking action? And are they committed to making an investment of time, effort, money, or resources? So we want to listen for these qualifiers as we go through the rest of the process. So the easiest way to turn that 180 is to basically say, so Joe, what I hear you say is that it would be extremely valuable to you if you could essentially, you and your leadership team or your supervisors could learn to better motivate and lead your employees so that you can reduce your turnover and increase your output to meet your desired needs. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So what results, if we were able to do that for you, what do you think the results would be that you could achieve through that? And as you walk through and you help your client, and you've got to take some time with this, but Joe is able to calculate that the 800 to 1,000 widgets an hour and a possible reduction in turnover even by 50% is going to equate to about $430,000 to his organization. So for the rest of the sales interview process, you basically say, well, Joe, $430,000 sounds like a lot of money to me. Is that really what you want to do? And Joe's like, well, duh, yeah. Of course we do. Well then, Joe, I've really got to ask you the question. What are you and your organization willing to do to achieve it? Now, bear with me, Joe. I've got to ask you this because we all want to be rich and skinny. But not all of us are willing to do what it takes to be rich and skinny. Our LMI process is an extremely robust, disciplined, application-based process. We are not standing in front of your group teaching or lecturing. Your participants are working, and they are working hard, and they're putting significant hours into the process in order for you to generate behavior change so that you can achieve what it is you want to achieve. Because you can't get anything overnight. So our process is normally not for everyone. I've got to ask, are you and your organization willing to do what it takes to achieve your results that you've just outlined? Now, you want to hear a yes, absolutely, where do I sign? But keep in mind, so far, I haven't talked investment, I haven't talked process, I haven't done anything about what this is going to look like. All we've talked about is what Joe's needs are. So I have a very simple flow chart that kind of walks us through what the process looks like. And then I help from a return on investment standpoint, and we kind of walk through the numbers. Now, for Canada, you're going to have to probably double, triple this number, so bear with us as you see some of the numbers here. But as you calculate the return on investment, let's just say an average price here, you're looking at a program price of about $2,500 a person. You got 12 people in a class. So the program cost is going to be about $30,000. Now, Joe's already indicated that the benefits to the program, if we are able to do what he wants us to do, is going to be about $430,000, a little over, for the first full year. So what you want to be able to do to be able to calculate that return on investment is to come to what we call the net program benefits over our program costs. How do you get to the net program benefits? Basically, you take the benefits of the program, you separate out the cost of the program. There's going to be basically a savings to Joe of about $400,000, a little over $400,000. In order to get the ratio number, you divide it back over the cost of the program, so you get a 13-to-1 return on your investment. Joe, are you and your organization willing to do what's necessary? Do you think Joe's a little bit more confident in being able to say absolutely? Yes, it's worth it to me, Nancy. We're ready to do this. It's worth the investment, the time, the effort, the money, the personnel. Yes, Nancy. So Joe, how soon do you want to get started? Can you see how that process works? Is it different than what you typically do today? If you go back to Randy's point, what's the one habit you would change in your sales interview process to do a better job of gaining incremental sales? So to get your prospect to identify specific, measurable, and photographable results through your effective questioning, so that they can tell you if they are emotionally committed to taking action, and committed to making investment of time, effort, and money. Hopefully that has helped all of you to be able to make that improvement in your sales. I think we just have just a few more minutes. I don't know if we can entertain questions. I know that I am the last thing between you and your lunch, so if you don't have questions, that's perfectly okay. Thank you.